First of all, thank you, Susan and Laurie, for doing this learning lab with us. Um, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Susan and Laurie so we can dig a little bit deeper into coaching. So, Susan, Laurie, not sure who's taken over, but there you go.
I'm going to kick it off for us, and then we'll throw it to Susan in a little bit. Thank you. Are there two people on the call beside the three of us here? Is that what I'm seeing? A couple people so far?
You have Tom, Heather, Bob, Larry, and Mike.
Wonderful. Terrific. So welcome, everybody. We thought what we'd do today is, as Wendy said, take a little bit of a deeper dive into coaching and understanding kind of what coaching is and how can we really get to a deeper level. We thought we'd start out by just kind of doing a little bit of a, at the ground level here, what we all know is what we consider to be really good coaching. Just a quick review of that. We'd like to do a couple demos and then talk about those things, and then talk about some potential advanced coaching concepts, and like to get some of your input about that, and then we'll kind of wrap it all up. So is everybody on the call has gone through the previous coaching academy? How was that, Wendy? Is that true or not?
No, you have one, two, maybe two or three that have gone through it. The balance have not.
Terrific. We love the mix. That's great. When we talk about coaching, let me see if I can get this a little bit. When we talk about coaching, we're talking about the developmental model, developmental coaching. And what that really means in our language for all of those that are part of this network, and I will say in a very biased way, is the most powerful kind of coaching. We know there's so many different kinds of coaching methodology that are out there, and a variety of people use some different methodology, but the bottom line is lots of people call themselves coaches. When we define what we're talking about something very, very specific, which is a two-person kind of co-creation in terms of coaching. So it's not, as it's been said in the past, rent a friend. It's not life coaching. It's not giving advice. It's not consulting. It's really a very special connection between two people, the coach and the person being coached, so as to co-create and create the potential for a huge discovery. And that fits really, really well into our understanding of developmental, because we understand we have all the tools and we understand the developmental process, and we take people through that in a variety of different ways, whether it be management or executive leadership or coaching. We have a process for that in terms of developmental understanding and helping folks develop attitudes, skills, and knowledge. Beyond that, though, there's a whole nother vast array of possibilities for people once they have those attitudes, skills, and knowledge. And taking what they have and exploring it at a deeper and deeper level to see how they can best achieve the very best of who they are. So wherever they are, where they want to be, and how can they close that gap. So in a nutshell, that's the developmental model. And when we're talking about coaching, we're talking about something that exists after a process has occurred with our client. So best practice quickly in this model makes us think of things like asking great questions, probing. We often talk about, and listening. Listening is probably the #1 skill that we as developmental coaches convey. And so we do a lot of listening, but listening for what? Listening for what's there and listening for what's not there, what's said and what's not said. As part of listening, though, then there's a part for questioning. And questioning can be lots of different kinds of techniques, but clearly using open-ended questions, trying to probe, as I said. And we often talk about keeping the top spinning. So the person that we're coaching is attempting not just to stay on the surface, but to go below that surface. That's really where the payoff is. And sometimes there are blind spots to someone identifying that, and our role is to help them unpack, if you will, some of that habituated thought, some of the habituated behavior, or some things that they just never have considered at a beyond just a conscious level. Having said that, let me just open it up to everyone else. Any quick thoughts or additions to what I've said? Susan, anything you want to throw in there?
Not using things like and so and how about that? So thinking when you're talking about really great questions, keeping questions short, not leading the person who's being coached with your questions. At this point, making sure that you are truly paying attention to what they're saying rather than formulating your answers. So I guess that's part of just really good listening. Those are my ads.
Thank you for adding. All right, with all of that as a quick background, can we get a couple people to volunteer to do a demo between a coach, one person being a coach, the other person being the person being coached, for about a 5-minute period. The person that will is willing to be coached will just think of an issue or an idea of something that they want to be coached upon. So we need a volunteer for that and a volunteer for the person doing the coaching.
Laurie, quick question for you. Would you prefer it to be somebody that is certified or somebody that isn't certified?
I think anything goes.
Okay.
For this round, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to ask that clarifying question.
Great, thank you.
And the person who's volunteering to be coached should have, don't make something up, have something that's actually happening in your life that you could use a few minutes of somebody coaching you on. All right, guys. Time to be brave.
So this is Mike. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Mike. Sure.
Hi. I'm using headphones because the sometimes doesn't work well for me. But I think the mic is still on the computer. So I'll volunteer to be the person being coached. You want to know what my issue is now or later?
No, you can hold on for that for a minute. Thank you, Mike. And do we have a coach? A willing coach?
Can I pick it? Can I pick my coach?
How about, is there somebody out there who's certified? Because that'll make it run a little bit smoother as far as the coach who would step in. I don't have a list of the.
In absence of a volunteer to take one for the team, I volunteer.
I was going to say you have Tom, Larry, or David Jude to pick from.
That's perfect because I was going to pick Tom.
Okay, well, careful what you wish for there, Mike.
There you go. I will.
Tom, what?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lori.
I will be the timekeeper and just, roughly tell you when it's 5 minutes. And I will turn it over to the two of you. And Mike, if you want to start and say what your I'm sorry, the coach, Tom, if you might ask your person being coached, what would they like to talk about today? That'll be
Yeah,
just fun.
I would ask that everyone else mute because it can be distracting when there's a noise and the screen gets disrupted. Except for Mike, of course.
I'm
So
trying to think
Mike,
how I can best do that.
yeah, I've got an iPad, but if you can't, just be quiet.
good.
You know,
All right, I'm going to
I
start.
trust you. Okay, so we'll
And
start.
Lori, Lori said you're gonna let Tom know 5 minutes and he'll have another 30 seconds or so to wrap up.
I'll be fine.
Good. Mike, are you there?
I am here.
How are you?
Well, I think I'm doing pretty good.
So normally we talk about what might have been in your month in review or a week in review form. In absence of that, I will just ask, how can we make the best use of the next 5 minutes?
So I guess I'd like to discover in my own self what's keeping me from filling the front end of my sales funnel.
Because?
Because sometimes I have lots of stuff in it and sometimes I have not so much stuff in it. And I'm looking for a technique. So for example, I have a friend who is a New York life insurance salesman. His goal is to have 15 interactions per day. And I said, how do you do that? And he says, just being in public places, networking, and then I have an email list that I cold email to. And I says, well, what's a public place? He says, oh, I go to Starbucks. And I don't think that's going to work for me. I don't think I'm going to find coaching or you know, any kind of trusted advisor network program clients at Starbucks.
Because?
Well, because first of all, I think the percentage of people at Starbucks that would actually want to be coached or be open to coaching is small. That's what I think. And the other one is that I think it's difficult to start asking somebody the model, like, you know, where you want to be in 18 months and what's keeping you from getting there at Starbucks. I mean, somebody I don't know, right? I mean,
Where would be a better place?
well, certain networking events are good for the introduction and maybe getting favorable attention, but I haven't found too many public places where you can actually have that kind of conversation. I haven't found any, to be honest with you.
How might you leverage networking events?
So I'm going to say I probably need to focus on the ones that have been more productive, and there's one organization that's probably more productive than the others. And then I probably need to find new ones, but I have not. I've looked, haven't found any new ones in my local area. The reason I say that, by the way, Tom, is because like I go to the chamber and it's the same set of people, and I see them over and over again. I've tried to interact with a couple of them, and maybe it was my immaturity or lack of knowledge, which I think is getting better, but maybe I should talk to them all again. But you know, the insurance agents, the real estate agents, you know, people of that ilk are pretty much convinced that they don't need any coaching.
To what extent do you believe those people have gaps between where they're at and what they want?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So you mean what percentage of those people have gaps?
Well, just pick one. And you just think about one that you were having trouble connecting with, having trouble having that conversation, having what I will call a gap-oriented conversation. To what extent do you believe that there could be a need or a want with that person?
So it's an interesting distinction, right? I'm pretty sure they have a need or a want, but they don't acknowledge it, right? So most of the time, and this is about half of the people, right? They'll say, no, I'm good. No, I'm exactly where I want to be. I'm making the money I want to make. My business is doing what I want it to do. I'm good, thank you. Well, where do you want to be in 18 months? Exactly where I am now. Exactly where I want to be.
How true do you believe that to be?
I guess I have to say I don't know, because the possibility is they just don't want to talk to me anymore. So they know that if they open up, the conversation is going to continue. And if they, and it could be that they don't feel like they need to grow. They're making the money they want to make. They're 50, 60 years old. They just want to coast into retirement and be done, right?
You guys can wrap up anytime you want.
Mike, how clear are you on what your ideal client looks like?
I'm not clear at all. I mean, the kind of people I work with that I like to work with are the people that say they have a need, are willing to address it, and then they do what they agree to do. Okay, so that's very generic. It doesn't say size of business. It doesn't say type of business. But I have a couple of clients like that, and they're delightful. And so if I had all my clients like that, I would be delighted, right?
Mike, we are about out of time for this session. Would this be a good time to end the call?
I think we have to.
Can you share one useful takeaway that you have from this discussion?
So probably the most useful thing to me is realizing that people are not admitting their needs, perhaps because they don't want to talk to me anymore. And there may be something I can do to change that by maybe not moving too fast, as my friend, one of my friends in a Trusted Advisors Network said, don't run red lights. I may be pushing that sales process too fast. So I kind of connected some distant points, but that's what I connected out of this conversation.
Thank you for sharing that. Laurie?
Thank you. You guys can hear me, right? I'm off of mute.
Yep.
Very good.
I can.
Thank you so much to both of you. Let's open it up to the rest of all of us. What did we hear?
I was wondering maybe if Mike could start by saying how he felt being coached by Tom. Did he feel like he was getting some information?
So yeah, I got some information, right? Because we had a 5-minute limit, it felt a little rushed. And I think it's just because of the 5-minute limit. I mean, I think if Tom and I had an hour to talk about this, it probably would have felt a lot more comfortable. And I don't know Tom's style, but maybe Tom would have, taken smaller chunks, smaller little steps.
So I thought the following the formula was great. It's a terrible time constriction to have 5 minutes to go through all this. So I thought the structure of the call was good. Followed the formula without the week in review. Thought that was great. Maybe what we did not hear was taking the primary concern you expressed and drilling down on that a little bit more. Maybe with a few more, or maybe even one more in that time constriction. Maybe one double loop learning type question and maybe one triple learning loop question that might have caused you to think a little deeper about the number of people in your pipeline and how you're getting them there and how you might see that differently and how you might think about it differently. Thought it was great. Questions were brief, to the point, short, succinct, all good.
Thank you.
What else?
I like the technique on Tom's end with, putting the power into Mike's hand to kind of lead the conversation without actually giving him the power to lead the conversation. How can we make the best use of the time? We're about at the end. Is this a good place to stop? Takeaways. I'm not certified in this coaching process, so I don't know if that's part of the formula Larry was referring to there, but I thought that was empowering to the person being coached to feel like they have control over where the conversation can turn.
Good. What else?
If I can just jump in and do a little bit of explaining about some of what Larry said, since we've got a good group of people who are not certified or haven't been certified, when he talked about double loop and triple loop questions. So that's one of the things that's one of the key components of understanding for the Coaching Academy. And that's, your questions can be single loop, which are basically transactional. They can be double loop, which is when you really take a look at how you see the world, and then the third, much like with the attribute index, how you see yourself in the world, and taking the rolling your client down into questions that help them get to those second and third levels where the skill and the power come in. Hard to do, but you know when you hit it.
Anything else from anybody? Comments, observations, thoughts?
Tom and Mike, thank you both very much for volunteering to be our on the call guinea pigs for that piece of it.
So Susan, let me ask if I had more time, or if I had, one of the places I wanted to take Mike is who are you being that you're not able to, that you're not able to get them to share where they want to be and admit that they're not there. And I tried to kind of get there by saying, what gaps do you believe that there are, despite what they're telling you, do you believe that there are gaps? I guess beyond that, just for those of you that have not been through the certification coaching, Mike started out by, tell me how I should do this, right? And so what you have to wrestle with as a coach is, okay, this is not about consulting. This is not giving him the answer. This is helping him find the answer that lies within him. So with that, I'll stop.
And I might have gone down the road.
I don't think I actually said that, right? So just
no, but it was implied.
Oh, you think it was implied? Because I said I want to discover in myself what's keeping me from doing this.
Oh, okay, I missed that. So that was poor listening on my part. I did miss that.
So I guess from a coaching standpoint, then do you dissect the statement and make sure you understand it? Is that part of what the questioning involves?
Well, clarifying questions. If you're not clear, and so now I plead guilty of not hearing that, which is, that's kind of a cardinal sin for coaching. And so we want to get, basically though, when you're coaching, I guess one thing that I learned is there's certain things, like technical things that I'm curious about. And I have learned to put that curiosity aside, because me completely understanding it isn't as important as it is for me helping the person who does understand it. And so having it explained to me can really get in the way. And so I've had to learn to put that aside.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I was thinking maybe I had not said it very well. Maybe I mumbled it or something. So lesson to me is when you're saying something, be sure you say it well. Thank you.
Susan, Laurie, would you say, in all of your experience with coaching, that Tom kind of does have a point? Most times when somebody most people that are not affiliates and about the whole self-development, but most times they are really thinking you're going to tell them what to do.
It's a very common, very, very common experience for sure. And I think some personalities lends more than others. You know, some people really just want to be told. Some people may feel a little bit insecure. And so that factors in as well. I think, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, but it becomes pretty clear, you know, in the coaching process, because many times somebody will say, I just don't know the answer, so why can't you tell me? They'll start out that way, but by the end of the call, and clearly more than just 5 minutes, the calls typically are about 30 minutes. By the end, I'm like, oh, thank you so much, you know, for giving me the answer. I never gave one answer. So it almost happens and transcends automatically when really good coaching is occurring. They don't even know that it's occurring, and they're not even necessarily aware that they got to a level, with the exception of asking at the end if they would share at least one thing that they're taking away. That's sometimes where that light bulb really happens. So it's a process that happens, and that's really the co-creation that I mentioned earlier. It's the connection between the coach and the person being coached, as well as having somebody alongside of, as opposed to lead. And that's one of the other big differences in this model. The person that's leading is clearly the person being coached. That's the person who's charged, and we follow where they go. And that's in an example of that was Tom. And right off the bat, I loved it, because the first couple questions after we heard the issue, you know, Tom said, because. One simple word, because, which basically forced more information to come, right? And then the second question was, because. So depending on where the person being coached takes us, it's really up to that person. And as Tom said, it's not about our clarification. It's about the person being coached and their clarification. So it's that balance.
I would also add to that, sorry, this is Susan, that part of that should be clarified up front during your agreement to do coaching with somebody. You're going to let them know that you're going to co-create. You're going to work together to figure out the answers, that you're not coming in as a consultant. I think that when we've been less clear about that, not only do you have more problems with that being a question, you also have more people not being as satisfied. So you've got to tell them what they're buying from you as clearly as you can. And then you'll still get people saying, just tell me the answer. I want to know the answer. I don't want to work so hard. Our job is to get them to work hard.
One of the challenges that I have is that it's very easy to not stay on point with the issue and start chasing rabbits down different holes. So when somebody makes the point about, or identifies the issue as needing more people at the top of the sales funnel, it's a challenge sometimes to continue to come up with relevant, short, brisk questions that continue to peel back the level or the layers of that onion to get to the core of it without jumping off into something else.
Right, and I think that that's one of our biggest challenges. Is easier to see when you step back from something, and that's, what do you think it was that that Mike was getting at? Do you think it was he was trying to figure out where to go network? My guess is not. My guess is he was trying to figure out something about him that didn't feel like it was working well when he was meeting people. And so again, it's easier in retrospect to say that, but as you get better at this and you get better at really hearing what they're saying, you can move your questions in that direction. And I too love the becauses, and I was just waiting, Tom, because I know you, for you to say, why is that important? And I think that that might have moved him a little bit down.
Good.
Anything else from anybody?
I do have a question. You know, if we have a client that is more sensitive to social situations, in that, you know, they may have found like Tom's questions kind of abrupt or like impersonal. You know, if we have a client like that in front of us, is it appropriate at all to reassure them of their questions, or, you know, how can we kind of soften the blow of such a direct approach while still not interfering with that?
Remember, in our scenario, we're talking about people who we've taken through some sort of a process. So hopefully you've built a relationship with them, and then you'll know just how quickly you can start to take them on a deep dive. Tom clearly was very willing to go right at Mike.
And in this kind of coaching, we call this phase 3 coaching, which happens, as Susan said, you know, after a process has been done. We have explained to them, here's what's going to happen in the next several weeks in this process. We've done this, this, and this. Now we're going to move into this other phase. Here's what it's going to look like. So it's giving them, again, the expectations. These are going to be calls. They're going to be driven by you. You'll complete a form in this case. That's part of the quote formula. And the calls will be about 30 minutes. And so they're going to know right up front that it's going to be different. And we might even do a demonstration type call to get them used to it if we think that's going to be a problem. But I think there is, again, that expectation that educating them what this part is and what this isn't, and how it's different from what we've just completed. So they have that contextual understanding, hopefully. And it's knowing our client. It's knowing our person being coached and how quickly we can move to that, and what they might need, what we anticipate they might need in terms of that preview, and what others might not need. So I think everything that we know about them, we're going to bring to this kind of coaching in this phase.
Okay.
And that often will include all of the assessments, right? So you've got some inside intel into how to approach them. Does that make sense, Heather?
Yep, it sure does. Thank you.
Susan, do you want to do the next demonstration or not?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Maybe Tom, since you actually, is there someone out there who could volunteer to let Lori know when she's at 4 minutes and 30 seconds?
I got to check my lobby. I need something to step away.
Can someone give Lori a 4 minute 30 seconds, or should she keep her own time?
No, I can do it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bob.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm going to be the coach, and Susan's going to be the person being coached, and we're going to see how this goes, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
And I am actually going to step away from my computer for a number of reasons, but also when we do these, we don't do that with a face-to-face, so I don't want to give Lori any hints.
All right. So we're ready to get started, Susan? Our
Yep.
timer.
Yep.
Thank you. Susan, how would you like to spend our time together today?
Oh, it's just more of this frustrating I'm having with this board I'm on. Most recently, we had an issue with the executive director that ended up having us have our insurance company pay some money out to an employee because of harassment is the easiest word to use. And to kind of get to the short of it, I'm on the personnel committee and we did a lot of work and we came up with some solutions and felt pretty good about it and brought that to, although they were a little surprised that it was as costly as it was, brought that to the board. The executive director just kind of blew up. You know, what? You mean we have to pay for this stuff? I don't want to pay for any of this stuff because she doesn't want to do it. And I'm just really frustrated. I'm feeling like we're spending all this time. I don't have a lot of spare time. And then nothing's happening there. And it's a great organization, but things need to move.
And
I thought that we had a good board. I mean, we have a good board. We have a board that gets along well and that's varied in our skills. But it became clear to me that we don't have a board that's willing to step up and make sure that the executive director is being held accountable. And she's been there for forever. She basically grew up in that agency. She's the executive director for like 30-something years. You know, so her answer is, what difference does it make? Well, we've always done it this way and it's been fine. This is the only time ever in all this. I feel like I'm wasting my time.
so,
I need to figure out if I'm going to stay on the board or not. You know, like I said, I feel like I'm wasting my time. You know, I asked colleagues of mine to give us some quotes on some things, and then we can't even come up with an answer in a month and a half. And I know what it feels like to be on the other side of that, but I feel incompetent and sort of foolish to my colleagues in the network.
what's important here?
What's important? Well, I mean, part of it is my time, like I said, but I also think part of it is feeling valued. You know, I actually said, someone's like, oh, there's a conflict of interest because you asked people and you're on the board. I'm like, wait a minute, I've been on this board for 5 years. I have connections in the learning and development field. That's what I do. How is it a conflict of interest? Because I ask people who I know are good. You know, and that don't feel good to me. That actually came from the executive director, by the way. So maybe that's it. I mean, maybe it's about feeling undervalued while I'm giving of this time and knowledge freely.
How does that sit with you?
Well, you know, I generally try to do things that I can bring value and I feel valued. I don't like to hang around with people who bring me down. I don't like to hang around with nasty people. I hated the coaching academy because I didn't know everything going into it and I wanted all the answers. So I don't like to feel like I'm not valued or not bringing value. So I guess I have to think about that and what that means as far as going forward, I guess.
what's valued?
Valued is when somebody acknowledges that there's some information that I have that can help a situation or that might be unique for a situation. And they acknowledge it. As opposed to this situation where I was told I was just a conflict of interest.
What's possible now?
That we end the call because time's up. I don't know if you heard that, Lori.
I did not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I thought you might not have. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Thank you. Susan,
So, comments?
go ahead.
Did anything feel different?
So this is Mike. For me, it felt very painful.
Mhm.
If I had been in Susan's shoes, I probably would have said something very different than what she said. Like, nothing more, that's it. I don't know.
Right. And so the point is helping our clients find that pain and help them sort of figure out what it is they want to do about that. How they see their role in the world.
Lori, I thought for a moment you were going to leave it, but I love the way you circled back to it right at the end. And that was to ask her what's valued.
Yeah, I hated that.
And if you would have had 10 more minutes, you would have drilled down even further on that.
Right. Because I think that's where she was going, even from the beginning, right? But she had to try to get there. And that's something that's so internal, right?
Which makes it painful.
And that's one of the reasons in the Coaching Academy that we purposely, we always want some tension, right? And a certain amount of tension in that coaching relationship when you're talking about an issue is appropriate and needed, as long as you're not stepping over your person and you understand all the dynamics of the person being coached. So the tension is good, but the other thing about the Coaching Academy is we do it without any visualization. And all of the developmental coaching, the phase 3 is we believe should be on the phone without any visuals. And the reason that is because that further supports that tension, a positive tension, I will say, and it changes the scenario significantly. I will say though, as the coach in this, probably I was trying to demonstrate, to Mike's point, maybe I was going just a little bit tougher because I was trying to demonstrate it, so much, the clarity of it. And so I could see where you might think that it was frustrating.
And then that's exactly where the person being coached ends up saying at the end of the call, well, thanks for giving me the answer. I need to think about how I'm valued.
Right.
Also, maybe Lori's longest question was like 3 words. Maybe it was 2 words. I don't know. What is being valued? 4 words. So, one of the best things that we learn in the coaching academy is the shorter your questions, the better off they are, because they don't start to lead your client somewhere. So if I hadn't come up with valued first and Lori did, and she started talking about being valued, that would have been her leading me there based on her biases. Right? So it's really hard to keep our biases out of these things. And I don't remember exactly what it was. And Tom, I know you don't mind the example being pulled out from your bravery of being the coach on the first call, but you said you had something in mind that you thought might be true for him. And while you have to be aware that what they're saying at first is not where they're going to end up when they get the onion peeled back, to try not to pre-diagnose what you think it is for them, make them say those words. That's the beauty of what we learn in the coaching academy. Does that make sense? Anybody who hasn't been through the coaching academy?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because the natural thing would be to just start talking and say too much, at least for me.
Right.
My attempt was, the words I think I used were and, maybe once or twice, and I think I said so. And the potential for that is to see where the person being coached goes. They take it where they need to take it, in a sense. I'm gonna follow her and wherever she's going. And so a really broad question like and, which truly is a question. I've made a statement, but I've made it into a question. Allows her to say, okay, I gotta wander maybe a little bit in this direction. So now where's she gonna go? I have no idea where she's gonna go, but she's gonna go to some place that is gonna be fertile ground for something else to be unpacked, perhaps. And that's what I'm really looking for, is I'm looking for those opportunities to probe. So even though yes, they were very short questions, they were really, in a sense, hugely powerful, and sometimes give great opportunities for our person being coached. And the silence sometimes, and the lack of me talking, I did much less, Susan did much more, worked out fine. And if we have an introvert, introverts need more time to process. So if I'm too busy talking, which I have been accused of throughout my whole life, until I really kind of got into this process, then it wouldn't achieve what I wanted it to achieve. So in this case, less is so much more.
And the goal of the developmental coaching is development, right? So we're not trying to be transactional and necessarily solve just this problem, right? We want to get to what's underneath this problem so that the next time something comes up and I'm not valued, I can say, that's that thing again. How do I want to handle it? So that I get to the point that I can generalize it, rather than saying, okay, I figured out what to do about this executive director, but I didn't gain any other information about myself through the call. Other feedback?
Does the person being coached always break the silence, or are there times when you have to break it as a coach?
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Mike?
Will the person being coached, in your experience, always break the silence? Or do sometimes you as a coach have to step in?
still not exactly sure, but there are times where you wait and the person being coached has nothing else to say. And so you ask another great question.
Okay, that was my question. That's the answer to my question.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it is true that normally when Lori and I have just a normal conversation, she talks a lot more than me. So because she was taking on the role of coach, it was different. And if you could hear, I mean, this is a real example for me. I didn't make this up. I'm currently in this situation. But for me, as Lori said, you're going to hear some breaks because I'm thinking in my head, and then I'll come up with some more information, right? But you get to know your PBC well enough, the person you're coaching, that you know that about them.
And trying to be very, very careful about that connection. So if I don't wait long enough, then maybe Susan will start to talk again. But I've already started to ask the next question, so we walk over each other. That's breaking that connection. So I want to be very mindful of that. And I think you do get to know that. So if I don't wait long enough, I potentially can break the connection, and that's not a good thing. And then we have to repair that again, in a sense. If I wait too long and it doesn't go anywhere, that potentially could break that connection as well. So it's having some good tools in your toolbox, I think, and good understanding of the person that you're coaching.
No, and part of the reason that I think coaching on the phone and why I literally walked away, one of the reasons I walked away from the computer is better, is because I know for me, I listen much better for the things that are beneath, around, in between the words, the not said, if I'm not looking at the person. And some of you might have heard me say this before, but I'm literally like looking down. I'm thinking really hard. I'm listening really hard when I'm coaching. It's exhausting to do a great job of coaching because you're listening so hard and trying to maintain that connection with the person that you're coaching. And it's great when they get a light bulb. And it's great when you get a double loop or triple loop question that just gives them an aha moment.
And what Susan has just described is so much the opposite of, okay, let me quick think of what my next question is going to be while the person is answering the question before that I've just asked. And, you know, in other situations, I have found myself doing that. In this situation, with the discipline of it, it really just doesn't happen. It's quite different. So that's part of that co-creation. So we can't be in a co-creative relationship as coach and person being coached if I'm into myself and saying, what am I going to say next? What am I going to ask next? How am I going to answer, or ask? I mean, it's not possible. So in that sense, once you understand it and get some practice in it, it's much easier to stay in that posture and clearly much more powerful.
I might add something here.
Please.
Can you guys hear me? This
Yes,
is Eric.
Hi,
Yeah.
Eric.
I didn't say hello earlier because I came in late and I've been distracted. I apologize, but I caught that last session. And one observation, that point of silence between the answer of the person being coached and now the coach reloading a new question allows the person being coached to hear what they just said. So there's value in that too, because they thought about it, now they've delivered what they said, and now sometimes even after you say it, it processes to the next point. So when the coach comes back with the next question, they're really ready for it.
Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. Hey, I have a question, and maybe I heard this wrong, but I think I heard either Susan or Lori say that this kind of coaching only happens after you've gone through a development process. Did I hear that right?
That's correct.
So the development process being like a leadership or a, you know, strategic planning or something like that, or is it something different?
No,
Yeah,
that's.
go
Go ahead, Susan.
ahead, Lori.
I think we both say that's right. That's the beauty of this. And that's truly that developmental model. So it's getting a person, again, with the attitude, skills, and knowledge, and it can be any process, that takes them with an action plan, right, where they're gaining skills and knowledge, and either in a group or individual session, right? And then this happens thereafter. And many of us take this whole process, and when we go to propose something, this is part of the proposal. So for instance, Susan and I will never just propose a process, right, and say, okay, end of story, right? So this follow-on coaching is always part of our proposal, because we feel so strongly that it is that next level, it is the level that really, really is where the payoff is. Did they get some good skills and knowledge out of the process? Hopefully, very much so. But what they do with that, and then how they take that individually and go to a deeper dive, is really where this happens. And so it's a broader view, if you will. Susan, you want to add to that?
Right, and and the action plan sets up where they might want to go.
Right.
Right. So they've at least done part of the action plan. They've got an idea of where those gaps are, much to Tom's point earlier, and that where do they want to go and where do they want to make some improvements. So, but it's a good question. Yes, it's meant to be that follow-on. And that also gives you the relationship building.
So this would be to all the participants in your program. If you had 8 people going through a program, there would be these 8 follow-on coachings, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
Thank you.
Susan, I'm looking at the time here. Did you want to just mention about that other book that we talked about for people to know about?
I guess and it's maybe more applicable for the people who have already gone through RECA, because it builds on that. But just to give you a recommendation, and anybody can read it, but it's called, I lost my piece of paper, Lori.
That's not what it's called. Hold on, let me find it. It's called The Coaching Secret, and How to Be an Exceptional Coach is the subtext there. And it's by Andrew Machon, M-A-C-H-O-N, and it's a book that was written in 2010. And we talk about some of advanced coaching. Even in the Coaching Academy, there's some stuff that is considered kind of fundamental, and that's kind of where the practice and everything happens in order for folks to graduate from that. And there's some other information in the curriculum that talks about advanced techniques and advanced coaching, which in the Coaching Academy, we don't often get to do much with. So the advanced coaching is really, again, where the payoff is. And there's lots
Right.
more tools and techniques. And this book, I think, speaks to that in a really, really positive way.
So we are right at 4 o'clock. I don't want to keep anybody who has a need to get off, but if we have a minute or two, if somebody has some other questions they want to answer. All right, Wendy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, ladies, for spending your afternoon with us and taking us a little bit deeper into coaching.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.
If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to connect with Lori or I. We're always happy to chat about this stuff.
And if you don't have their contact information and need it, just shoot me an email and I can get that information off to you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks,
joining us,
everyone.
everybody.
Very
Have a
good.
great rest
Thank
of your
you.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.